understand this is for international region. For most of folks on the call is pre-sales community. So good afternoon, good evening, depends where exactly you are. I prepared about 4 or 5 slides and focus. Okay, so first of all, while you're meeting with a customer and talking about our APM offering, we need to realize that core APM offering currently, it's all about synthetic transaction monitoring. So, or in another word, is a BPM, right? Business process monitoring. It's very important to understand what is the strength of or synthetic transaction monitoring. I use this slide to typically call out the strength of our BPM. Number one is our BPM, has the broadest protocol coverage compared with our competitors. It's definitely the most powerful synthetic transaction monitoring tool in the market so far, because of the underlying technology we're using, which is load runner and UFT that load runner is embedded in the BPM. UFT we can actually integrate with it. So the load runner and the UFT, as you know, are market leading testing tool. It can support all kinds of protocols, regardless, right? What kind of UIs or even non-UI API kind of transactions. They can generate the scripts to simulate the user transaction flow. So because of using that technology, so we have a pretty strong supportability for all the protocols or applications in this transaction area. So that make us pretty powerful and very strong in this particular area. And then another thing is all kinds of client stimulation we can support, right, including browser and smart tablet and mobile, regardless what it is. Right, that's also pretty unique with the low runner and the UFT technology supporting the background. Number three is our service level management. This is one module we spend a lot of investment in there, and very very sophisticated design and multiple level of this service level that you can configure. Service application, transaction flow, CI, you name it, right? So it can be very complicated, and it can also be simplified depending where customer requirement is. And then we also provide a hybrid type of deployment model to our customer. Customer can select on-premise or SaaS or combination of on-premise and the SaaS deployment kind of method. Right? I'll explain a little bit later. We're predominantly running our SaaS infrastructure in AWS, but we also support probes running in public cloud and private stack as well. Right. Last but not least, because this APM has a lot of role in the DevOps role. Typically, because of our integration with the testing tool, we can simply transfer those testing scripts that customer use in their load testing to the BPM script, right? So without any modification, we can leverage that. So a natural integration in the DevOps part.
Kevin, just a quick question. This is Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
So here, when we say about BPM on the cloud or on SaaS, when we say in the cloud, we're talking about running actually synthetic monitoring on AWS EC2s, for example, or we're talking about also managing on-prem BPMs.
It's both. I'll explain in later slide.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there's detail in later slide.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, so this flow, I kind of, try to illustrate how the BPM transaction is recorded and then played by a probe, which is kind of, you can treat it as robot, right? And it will inject the transaction flow, and then simulating an end user. So the key is to be able to measure every each of the step and also break down, the transaction into different layers, right? And we can do the DNS and the CPS and database layer kind of measurement. And in a network, we can trace every the steps and tell you where the latency is in which hop through the internet or intranet, or other type of measurement like service response time and page breakdown to every each of the object. So fairly powerful synthetic transaction monitoring. This is core offering in our SaaS APM right now. We used to have other offering like root user and then a tracing, but we discontinue those. I'll talk about the new tracing offering that we're working on, and actually that's my very last slide, and it's kind of roadmap slide I'll share with you. So I'll pause for a sec. Any question on this particular slide? So basically, takeaway is what kind of a strength that we have in our SaaS APM offering, which is synthetic transaction offering, and what kind of a strengths we have compared with all competitors. All right. So when you try to sell SaaS to customer, there are a lot of questions that will be asked, right? Predominantly, it's around cost saving, basically. Or number one, go to market is, of course, our install base customer, right? And many of the customer are having APM. So what exactly is the reason that they would start considering SaaS? This is actually happening kind of on regular basis right now. Every time I talk to customer, I I introduce our SaaS APM offering. Many of them offer a SaaS kind of option. Some more maybe did, but for some reason, we did not show the explicit cost benefit out of the SaaS offering. So it wasn't successful right before in the previous deal pursuit. So number one thing is we got to be able to elaborate what exactly benefit they receive out of the SaaS, on cost, and why do they reduce the cost, moving from on-prem to SaaS. Okay, so a few things that really lead to the cost reduction. And by the way, um, a rule of thumb is when you try to convert customer from on-premise to SaaS, you look at what they're paying for the on-premise software service as a service, right? Because the customer has to pay service maintenance year after year, right? So if you can convert customer to a SaaS by selling 2 times, less than 3 times of their existing paying maintenance service, that should be some kind of cost reduction to customer. So it's not less than what they're currently paying. It should be a 2x or 3x. Why? Because of a lot of cost item that it does not show in the maintenance service. For example, hardware. For example, labor. For example, that maintenance, the hardware maintenance, database license, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this cost add up to actually 2x to 3x of their maintenance cost. That's the real cost that they're paying for them for running the APM on-prem. Okay, so um, that's a cost, and other benefits, of course, a superior time to value. Of course, customer, can, get the APM service up and running in the flash, right? Because we provide all kinds of service. All they need is access to the SaaS environment and some learning curve if they have never used our product before. And then the cost of ownership, this is the main cost that they got reduced, as I said, right? They don't have to pay license, they don't have to pay, infrastructure, and they don't have to pay infrastructure maintenance. They don't have to do the migration and upgrade. And typically, that's a lot of the cost. And then service assurance side, that's another benefit they receive. They do not have to worry about the infrastructure outage or APM outage, this kind of incident, because our SaaS team deals with that. And then we also provide, some help in terms of the configuration. If a customer doesn't even want to spend their, investment on creating the script and uploading the script and stuff, we can do that for them. So lots of customer actually buys that service and let us, to deal with the script. And so they just receive the events and then and the reports. That's it. So it's very cost efficient. And also in the SaaS area, we provide a very good CSM service. It's unlike the on-premise service, the SaaS service, SaaS CSM service is a very important part, and they really work closely with the customer on daily basis and provide, what customer needs and have a regular cadence with customer to review their usage, and then to kind of improve customer experience and identify risk early enough. That kind of, for us, that kind of thing. Compared with on-prem, CSM plays much more important kind of job role in this particular area. All right, so those are benefits you want to call out with the customer when you have a conversation with the customer about our SaaS offering. And this is actually, these benefit actually applies to rest of the SaaS service as well, OpsSpeed. So I just want to call it out here. You can use for any kind of a SaaS conversation. Now here is the details I earlier explained. We're gonna we offer a few options in terms of what exactly SaaS services can customer purchase, right? In terms of APM SaaS, they can do fully a whole SaaS offering, which means they can use our hosted APM regardless of dedicated APM instance. For example, a large customer city or HSBC, which is we're working on right now, or Marriott, we're working on as well. They can have their dedicated instance of APM that we host in the SaaS AWS somewhere, right? I think it's in Oregon actually, mostly. Or they can purchase shared APM instance, which means they're going to share the instance with many other customers. This is cheaper option, but they do not have some other benefit. For example, integration with their upstream ticketing system. If you have a dedicated APM, you can do that. With the shared APM, you cannot do that. And a lot of APIs that you can use out of dedicated APM and does not work for shared APM. So there are a lot of difference between the two, but of course, dedicated APM has a more cost. That's one. Another, and then if they host APM in our SaaS environment, they can use our public probes where I listed here, which I listed here in these major continents and cities that we host our APM probes. And also, if they want to monitor their internal application, they need to deploy their own BPM on their prime on-prem, okay, and it can be connected to our APM SaaS instance as well. So they can use combination of our external probes as well as their internal probes to probe their internal applications. So this is number one, and number two option, right? I call it out to use dedicated, APM or shared APM to use their and connect or external pops, which is point of presence, and then their internal probes. That's one and two option. The third option is customer can host their on-prem APM and use their internal probe to monitor the internal applications. They can also use for public probes and connect to their on-prem APM. So the public probe will monitor the external APM, external applications, and then send data back to their APM server. So they can just trade these pops or public BPM probe as their own probe, right? And same way as their internal BPM. So it doesn't feel any difference. The only difference is they need to open up the network channel through the internet and stuff, and then receive the data from more probe. I'll pause for a sec. Any question on these deployment options? Okay, so it's very important to understand these options, because in my conversations with the customers, I kind of realized they didn't even know this option that they can use some of our external probes to probe their external facing applications. Many of our customers actually build their internal probes and let the probe go out of the internet and come back to probe, and come in to probe their external applications, kind of simulate external probe, or a customer build their own probe somewhere in the internet to do that. So just so make sure a customer know that we have this option, and it's potential business opportunity, right? A little bit on the pricing scenario. So toward 1, 2, 3, there's three kind of a deployment option. I listed the SKUs, right, for your convenience that you can easily to use. Number one scenario is if it's a dedicated APM instance, they want to use both external and internal BPM service, and then they want to use service level management. Then we price this. Number one is dedicated instance SKU, and then we provide a external internal ultimate edition. Why ultimate edition? Because they need an SLM, right? So ultimate edition, external internal points, right? Compare with on-prem, that which we do not charge by transaction. We charge by actually we charge by transaction, but we can sell the unlimited probe location. In a SaaS, you cannot sell unlimited location. We don't do unlimited location, because it's a SaaS, resource. Every transaction counts. So this is actually per transaction per location. It's called points. So every single transaction from every single location, a customer needs to buy 1 point. Ultimate has a SLM, and Premium does not have SLM. The second option is a shared APM, use both external and internal in the shared APM instance, and then no SLM. That's why you see a Premium, and we only sell them points. We do not sell them APM dedicated instance, which is, you know, the most expensive item. The third option is the customer use on-prem APM. They use our public POP service. Then we only sell them POP service, POP points. Right? So every point is used this SKU. In addition, you can sell customer configuration and scripting service, as earlier said. If customer does not want to do the script, then we can sell this to them. This is based on transaction-based service. And also we can sell additional remote consulting service if customer need regular support. You know, having one of our engineer, you know, SaaS operation engineer on the call to help them with the simple configuration or whatever. That's something that we can sell. All right, these are in terms of services in addition to the actual you know, points, transaction points. Last but not least, if customer has a site scope on-prem and they want to integrate with our APM console to provide a SAM system availability management service, we have these options to for the customers. Right, Premium, which does not have SLM, and Ultimate has SLM. Right, depends customer use OSI or URL. Can select these SKUs to sell for the site scope integration. And be mindful, these SKUs does not have site scope license in it, right? Lots of times, you know, customer got confused. Oh, I buy this, I got site scope as well. No, this does not include on-prem SaaS entitlement. Customer need to have on-prem SaaS, on-prem site scope entitlement to use these service to integrate with their with our SaaS APM. Okay, any question?
What would be the difference between the scripting point and the remote consulting hours?
Scripting is we actually do the scripting for them, record the script and upload the script, you know, the transaction script, right? Consulting is kind of more general help. Like, you know, they don't know this menu, how to do it. They know that menu. They don't in general how exactly use our tool, that kind of, you know, general consulting type of it does not involve that we creating a script and upload it and do their, you know, help them to actually get hands dirty to do their job. It's not like that. Consulting basically, you're on the phone or on the team meeting like this and walk through this workflow, kind of explain the menu, kind of thing.
Then another question, I positioned this to DHL, and there were a lot of questions around the default ports that we're using on the SaaS POPs. They had issues with the IT and the IT. Is there any kind of a documentation that exists with what the prerequisites are and what can and can't be changed, what's fixed and what can be tweaked?
I'll leave that to Asaf to
Yeah.
answer later. Okay, Asaf should be able to, you know, tell you.
Yep, we'll take it in the
Okay.
Q&A session, Elvin.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, real quick, I want to show this one last slide to you. I apologize, I probably used, you know, more time than I'm supposed to, but I thought this is important. We are working on a new application observability SaaS offering. Okay, we are actually, you know, in the middle of, you know, preparing that and workshop, working through the use cases and investment and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. We just had a workshop last week to talk about a lot of details. This product is to come in about 1 year time frame, hopefully. Very high level. We haven't really got to that other details, but this is some hot topic that you will see and get involved while you sell APM or APM product to customer, right? Because our competitors, Dynatrace, Datadog, AppDynamics, New Relic, they're all claim they are pretty strong in this particular area, right? Which is how to manage and get inside of a cloud native application. right? So currently we do not have a product to address that business problem, but we are working on, this new product, leveraging the open telemetry to deliver this product, right? Resolve the core use case is to resolve cloud native application, the microservices running the containers and distributely in the cloud. A few hundred of the microservices can be hosted in it anywhere, right? In any flavor of cloud, and on-prem, and the operating model can be, it's pure DevOps. Every small development team that's responsible for one or two microservices, and only responsible for one or two microservices, and then they're kind of a self-efficient type of decentralized operating model, right? So promote um, the agility of the development.
That looks a lot like the diagnostic, right, Kevin? So
Right.
this is diagnostic capabilities in the cloud,
Right.
basically.
I put together, use some of the diagnostics graph because we do not have a graph,
Okay.
the visibility yet. This mock is using, let's say this is the event input. Okay. Customer receives some event, say, okay, there's something wrong with my application. And this is infrastructure graph, right? Which is, don't ask me where it comes from. It's actually all the graph actually comes internal. I did not use any of the external graph. This is our own graph. So this is basically illustrate, okay, events and the metrics to show our, infrastructure behavior, and logs we collect, and then show, there could be some of the microservice events coming in at the same time. And there's some topology we can pin based on the traces we collected. We can, tell, okay, number one, how many microservices you have. And if there's a new service coming in, join the family, it will be discovered right away, and it will be, displayed, visualized right here. So this is very dynamic. And then every single web services and change, for example, they dropped a new version of it, we can capture that. And then a breakdown to the waterfall chart, service to service to service and to APIs. Each step costs, take how much time, really to show you the latency, right? Basically, a few problems that we resolve. Number one, we help the DevOps team to understand what their, microservices looks like, what dependency. For the microservices you're responsible for, who are calling you and you are calling who, right? They kind of a path to highlight it. Number two is that we also make this dynamic. If any of the microservice has problem from the tracing data, it will be highlighted as a red, that kind of thing, right? Or any of the path is longer than, latency longer than it's supposed to. For example, on average, from the, learned behavior, it's a 3 millisecond, and all of a sudden it's 30 seconds, then it will be red, right? And then you can drill down with this waterfall chart, and also the corresponding hosting container microservice container microservice hosting container infrastructure. If it has some performance issue that contributing to the latency, it will show up here, right? So it's, all the components are very dynamic. And by the way, there isn't a very like human defined monitoring condition compared with our BPM and other monitoring tool. This whole observability concept is relying on learning, machine learning, right? And the dynamic environment, and based on the tremendous data in tracing and logs, and then to learn the normal behavior, and then to identify abnormal behavior. The alertings all depend on the anomaly identification. So this whole thing we're working on. Right now, we're working on the MVP, minimal viable product requirement. In your day-to-day conversation, or you probably have connection with some of your customers, show this to them, and then help me to identify some of the customers that have this requirement, or the application team that you have a connection with, that we can connect to, have some conversation to help us to validate the MVP requirement. That'll be very, very helpful, because we want to deliver something that we can customer need and we can sell, right?
So
So
this is only for the cloud, Kevin, to monitor the cloud, right? Or
typically this address distributed cloud native application running in the cloud,
okay.
but it should be able to cover classic application as well. However, that's not a core problem that's intended to resolve. Right, the core problem is a complex, cloud native application that's composed of hundreds of microservices running in the cloud. It doesn't have to be cloud. Customer can run it on-prem, but they kind of simulate that cloud type of infrastructure. That's same. In theory, that's cloud type of infrastructure. Right, many customers do not like public cloud. They build their own cloud, or they use what's called a virtual private cloud, right? So yeah, treat that as a cloud too. All right. So just a little call to action for all of you folks. If you have customer that has this kind of requirement, and if you have customer that owns application that I can talk to, please connect me, and I'll be very happy to have a conversation with the customer. Number one, to validate our requirement for upcoming products. Number two is we start cooking some of the upcoming opportunities. Right. That's everything I prepared to share with the team. I apologize for taking more time than
No,
I
that's
supposed
great.
to
Thank
be.
you so much, Kevin.
All right.
If anyone has a question related to what you saw until now, this is the time. If not, you can ask later when Asaf will talk. And now we will ask Carvin to give us a demo. So let's feel the SaaS products, how it looks, how it feels. So Carvin.
Can you hear us, Calvin?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, now it's better.
Okay, very good. All right, just give me one moment here. Let me share. Okay, so quick introduction here. I'm the CSM for Item SaaS, and well, I work as a APM engineer for around what 6 years, and then I moved to the CSM role. Um, I had a conversation with the team just to provide, the latest, because I know there has been some changes on the SaaS side. But what I'm going to do is show you how the login works and everything. Just give me one moment. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Can see.
Okay. Well, Kevin covered a lot of the architecture part, and I think we have a lot of details there. So on SaaS, there are two offerings for APM, as you may already know. Basically, is a dedicated farm or a share farm. Dedicated is when you have your own. Let's say the customer would request for a dedicated environment. They have their own servers, and they can run some tasks that may not be available in on a share farm, for example, APIs. But all the details on what you can do and what you cannot do, I can provide that if you need. But and what if you have any questions, you can also interrupt. And a share environment, it would be basically a farm which is deployed for um, getting the amount of customers that can be handled on that farm. And then still there are specific database for each customer, since it is managed by the customer ID internally. So the only situation would be like pricing and things. So in a scenario where a customer would request or need a dedicated APM, we can talk about some of security aspects and details that they may ask. And is also dependent on the size of the deal, let's call it that way. So depend if they request for a dedicated farm on what they're paying for the service or their licenses covers the cost, then there would be no extra charge. But yeah, those are little details that uh, we will need to explain or analyze to see what is better for the customer. Um, for login, you would have the My Account, if you're familiar with that, where customers would create the users, they would have access to the support cases, the notifications that are sent out for, when there would be an upgrade, where there would be some fix or some downtimes. Um, and from there, they can, once they have the admin user created in APM, so they can go ahead and add any additional user that they may need. From a licensing perspective, I'm just gonna log in here and let me see this. There are two type of licenses for APM on SaaS. Specific for share farms, there would be the SaaS BPM internal license and then SaaS BPM external licenses. External licenses are used for our public clouds, public POPs, and then the internal is for those that are using their BPMs on-prem. So all that we need is just to have the URL, in this case similar to this, so they can create their instance on their private BPM to be able to connect to the APM on SaaS. And well, the SaaS part, they would take care of everything in terms of upgrades, of fixes, and all that would be notified. There's normally when we onboard a customer, we would present to them all the details that they need to know, how many downtimes during the month and details like that. So all on this call are familiar with APM UI. I don't know if this is for specific people on the call or.
Yes.
Okay. So basically we don't have any differences. I would say it's pretty much the same. Maybe some details like you will not be able to see, let's say, license information, the customer specific, when they are on a share farm, right? So they would need to, let's say, request to the support team to know the license usage. But we can also provide the report if they ask it, let's say, to send out every 15 days or once a month, so they can also be they can know what they are consuming. And the additional features. I mean, the only things that I think a customer would also be happy about is the sense that they can request for assistance with scripting if they're, well, there's an additional service that they will need to pay. But in general, the support is really good in the sense of, you know, how we handle different requests. So we have, for example, when you're talking about APM demand requests, which is like, you know, if they need to configure, let's say, a specific report, or they need to create an application from scratch. And we also have the break and fix part. So, you know, both of them are covered. It's just, you know, depending on the kind of request, which team will be handling those things. And also, well, there's a community where they can, you know, check what other customers are saying, what other customers are talking about, any features that are there. And then for enhancement requests, they can also go to the Idea Exchange website, where they will be able to, you know, add those enhancements that they may have. And based on boats, they can see, you know, how is it progressing, if other customers are also interested in it, and then, you know, R&D would take a look and say, well, how relevant is this, and they would define the time when they would be adding it to the tool itself. So yeah, I mean, there are so many things, but I would open it for questions. I know that at least what Kevin covered would be what we
Can
have
you
here, but sure.
expand about the process of, for example, if I want to upload scripts, how it works?
Okay. So we have the script repository, right? That would be the first section you need to access once you have your script ready. And there you will start building what is needed for an application. So you go script repository, upload the script, and once it's uploaded there, then you can go to the monitoring section and then start building, creating your application and selecting the location from where you want it to run.
So one more thing to add on top of this is APM SaaS is APM, like any other APM out there. Users have their permissions to do task or not to do task. With, I think, any of our APM SaaS customers, we typically see users which are more as the EUM administrators. And these are the users that will come to this area and upload script to the script repository, create business application, deploy them, define the scheduling, and so forth. And we also have the regular users or viewers user that only interested in consuming the data. They will typically go to the applications side of the house and consume the different reports and the dashboards, or maybe even they only rely on emails and custom reports that they're getting out of the system on a scheduled basis, which the admin user created for them. So from that perspective, the administration of the scripts and the BPM applications and transaction and everything is exactly the same as any other APM that you're familiar with.
Exactly. And thank you for adding that, Asaf.
And
so yeah,
when you
go
open
ahead.
your private POP and you want to report to this SaaS environment, then you need to get some certificates or?
Yes, so you're accessing BPM. So whoever's not familiar, communication between APM and BPM is actually one direction, like the band. It's from BPM to APM. So BPM register itself to APM. As you can see, every APM has this entry URL, HTTPS. In SaaS, everything is HTTPS, which means SaaS operations will provide the necessary certificate, and that certificate need to be deployed on the on-premise BPM or the internal BPM, so that this BPM will be able to communicate to SaaS. Obviously, that BPM need to have internet access to access our APM SaaS via proxy, via whatever mechanism the customer wants to have. But that's the certificate they need to import on the BPM, yes. Make sense?
Yes. What about reports? Reports they produced by themselves, or they can also get a service of getting the reports, alerts, all of this?
So I think that's exactly the typical tasks that fall under the consulting license that Kevin showed earlier. How to create alert, how to create report. I need help in even creating my first application in the administration, deploying scripts, and these are type of consulting that SaaS operations can help your customer with, for sure. After they have the knowledge, they can do it by themselves.
Right,
But
and there's
they need to
sorry.
pay. They have a they buy a package from the beginning, or they pay for each operation. How it works?
No, I think it's part of the license. It's like a bucket of hours that.
Okay.
Right, Calvin? Consulting and
so
scripting is based on buckets of hour buckets.
right, that is correct for creating scripts. Yeah. But for the rest, creating reports, alerts, that's part of the service.
What would be a recommendation as a bill of materials if you got a new customer who wants to come in? How many of those consulting hours and how many hours per script? Well, a script are easy enough, but the consulting hours for the other stuff should be put in the bill of materials. Is there a rule of thumb?
Well, this is Kevin. You want to? Are you still there? I'm not sure if you want to answer this one.
No, Kevin is not here.
Okay. It all depends on so let's say we have a new customer. So the delivery team will start asking questions to know what is needed if they're doing a migration or if it's a they want to build a brand new environment. So based on that, they will see what SKUs to add to the contract, and then from there, they would decide, who to involve on and what to be what's need to be charged. But yeah, the reason why I wanted Kevin to answer this one because I know that there are some changes on for example, with the new customer that is coming, HSBC. But yeah, they need to collect a lot of information from the customer to understand, everything, and then based on that, the delivery team will say, okay, we would need this amount of hours, we will need to configure this and that, and then together with product manager, in this case Kevin Pan, they would decide how to operate or how to build everything that customer is needing.
So the answer is pre-sales shouldn't be doing the bomb, but should be engaging with the SaaS team.
Sorry, what was that?
Yes and no. At the end of the day, the pre-sales are also part of this relationship between Micro Focus and the customer. But you're right, the majority is probably going to come from SaaS. And one more thing I want to mention, and I think this is where Calvin role is demonstrated to its best. Calvin is the customer success manager for SaaS customers. They have his emails and phone if they need to contact. And if they have a need to do some task, how do I do baseline? Can I do even baseline in APM SaaS? These kind of questions can come directly to Calvin. Calvin will find the necessary resource to help the customer, and that's free of charge, right? It's part of the contract of having APM SaaS and having customer success manager helping them to be successful. So let's say that consulting piece of the agreement, that shouldn't be what's blocking or preventing us from doing business. We'll find a way to get the customer to the excellence and be successful with what they're trying to do.
Carvin did provide me a chunk of information, but I really struggled to find it for the last customer that was wanting to do a APM POP kind of firewall settings, ports, etc. Is this documentation documented somewhere like an onboarding document that we can share? So if we are doing a proof of concept or customer is about to start an implementation, we can give him.
It's very simple, Alvin. HTTPS. So we need port 443, and that's it.
That's it. So the port 80 is all the document not needed.
No.
And
I don't think we have any APM SaaS customer running on HTTP. I think everything is secured.
Yep. Thank you. Easy.
Yep. As I said, the communication to SaaS, either from BPM or from end users, is going through the front door, the gateway, and that's always HTTPS or port 443.
And then once they're running transactions back into their environment from the SaaS POPs, then it'll be the ports for their application.
The public POP will need to communicate with the on-premise APM server through port 443, or if they installed APM on-premise and harden it and they're using port 445, then that will be the port that we need to integrate BPM to APM and make sure the firewalls are open on that port. But typically it will be the front-end port 443.
No issues about changing the defaults. We can, as if it was the on-prem one.
On SaaS now.
Yeah. Thank you, Asaf.
No problem.
Yeah. So, any other questions? I think from application performance management is the same. That would be there. So I would rather to open it to questions instead of presenting everything. Because the tool is the same as on-prem. Just the connection settings that's changing and security aspects on customer side and things like that. Yeah. But any other questions?
If not, I will ask questions. So guys, feel free. It's we got into the Q&A or open discussion session. So feel free if you have any questions or doubt on your mind. And if not, I can ask a few questions to make the discussion alive. Yes, Sami, I think.
Yeah, I'm not just asking about, some of the, because, sometimes we have customers who are on-prem. Most of the customers in Africa here are, BBM customers who are or RUM, who are on-prem. They're using on-prem. So we can leverage one of the use cases that Kevin mentioned, right? To have the BBM running on-prem and reporting to APM on SaaS, right? That's a good
yes
use
and
case.
no. Yes and no. It's a very good question, actually. I took one of the questions I listed to myself. So a question back to everyone. What do you think is the difference between an internal BPM or a public BPM, point of present? Or do you think they're exactly the same?
In terms of
Exactly
what?
the same.
Okay, so Alvin said they are the same.
I'm asking in terms of what you mean, the same in terms of connection?
Functionality, capabilities, connectivity, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same as well.
It's maintained by others, not by you.
The public BPMs, yes, they are maintained by SaaS, by us. We are deploying them. I think there are about 20 different locations around the globe. I know they're also trying to extend that list, but at the moment it's about 20. So actually, connectivity-wise, Alvin, you're absolutely correct. The BPM is a BPM. It will connect to APM exactly the same, whether it's a public BPM that we install or private. But there is one major difference, and that is the reason I mentioned that, Sammy, because that is probably the reason to make a decision. Should I go with a private POP or public POP? On public POP, you are limited with the type of scripts that you can replay from that BPM. For example, I'll give you the simplest example, UFT. UFT protocol, Unified Functional Testing, is basically BPM replaying the user and controlling the screen of that workstation. Obviously, we cannot allow these kind of scripts on a public POP because there are other users, other scripts that want to run from the same BPM machine. So the type of protocols, Vuegen scripts that you can replay on a public POP is much more limited than what you can do on your internal POP, which is no boundaries, no limitations at all. So if you have a customer that the only script or that they want to replay is a UFT, for example, or one of the other scripts that we don't support on a public POP, then they will have to go with internal POP.
Is this, Asaf, is this documented? Is this all documented or not yet? Like,
I believe it should be documented in SAS docs. I'll take this offline with Carvin to make sure we have a good reference to what is allowed or not. You're right, it should be documented.
So VUGN protocols, all of them can work, but we can't use UFT where it does desktop GUI manipulation.
I need to check also if inside Vuegen there are protocols which won't work. For example, Citrix may not work, right? Because it needs the agent to connect to the Citrix server, the Zen server. So that may be another example where a script may not work on your public POP. But yeah, most of the Vuegen scripts, HTTP protocol, REST protocol, a true client, they will work on a public POP. Yes. Yep, good question.
Right. That is correct. There is documentation for that, so yeah, we can share those.
Yep, excellent, Calvin. If it's documented, you can share it on the chat. If not, we can send it to Alon offline, and I can share with the team.
Okay. I know, for example, for the Citrix, I heard the other day from the scripting team that yeah, there are some specific configuration that will need to be in place to be able to monitor. But yeah, those are questions that we can send directly to the scripting team.
And in terms of also if Carvin, if there's any also security documentation on how we're handling security, how we are kind of guarding the transactions there on SAS, that would be good as well, because this is a big concern here in Africa. Usually people are kind of worry about that a little bit. So like
the communicate HTTPS, the communication is
okay,
signed by a public certificate, sas.microfocus.com, and the communication from the BPM to the APM servers on HTTPS. With regard to the login to APM, every user that the customer wants to connect to APM and get some operation, that user, they need to contact SAS operation team and tell them, here I have a new user that I want to onboard. This user need to have permission to application A, B, and X, Y as an admin, and maybe for application C and D only as a read only. So this type of onboarding of a user is something that the admin customer need to contact SAS and they can create the user for them, or if the customer already have admin privilege, they can create the user with username, password, and then they can log in to APM. If
Great.
we'll have time at the end of the call, we can talk a little bit about user authorization model and IDP, identity provider, and identity management. So these are questions that can be answered with that topic. But I'll leave that to the end of the call if we still have time.
Yeah, just sorry, I'm taking all the questions. Just one more question. On the on-prem APM, when integrating with Operation Bridge, I know in the roadmap for APM, we have a roadmap to basically to get rid of the APM server and to have all the monitors report directly to Operation Bridge. I know that's somewhere in the roadmap. I think I'm correct. Is that also the case with the SaaS version?
Very good question. So one thing that we need to be very clear about is, even though we have APM in SaaS and we also have OBM in SaaS, these are two separate products, not that well integrated. So with regard to integrating APM with OBM, whether it's on-premise OBM or SaaS OBM, that can be done only if you're running on dedicated APM instance. If you're on a shared farm, you cannot integrate with OBM. But if you are on a dedicated APM instance, we can integrate it with your on-premise OBM or with OBM SaaS. Now, with regard to roadmap and direction, yes, we are going towards a future where APM will be redundant, because we will have all the APM capabilities, such as end user management, administration of monitors and scripts and so on, SLM, baseline reporting. All of those things will be available as capabilities on top of Optic Data Lake. But that is still in the future. One day in the future, you're right, Sami, we won't need APM anymore, because I will just need OBM and Optic, and then I can manage my BPM monitors and downtimes and SLM, everything from there, and all the data will be sent from BPMs directly to Optic Data Lake, and all the reporting and SLM and everything will be done on top of Optic, and then at that day, we won't need APM anymore. At that day, that capability is going to be available as part of OBM SaaS for those customers. I can't guarantee we will have a good migration for these customers, especially not so much about the data, but that's the direction.
Perfect. Thank you, Asaf. Perfect.
I'm assuming there's a doc that says how we harden the data centers, because some of the guys will be running scripts that have got logon access into their applications. So if they're wanting to know how secure we are, we do have similar for SMAX and HMX. So I assume there's one for APM as well.
No, there isn't. But again, that's one thing I want to leave to the end about how to have a more sophisticated user authorization and user authentication mechanism, Alvin. So for now, I have it in the list of questions, but I'll leave it to the end if time permits.
Thanks, Asaf.
So just to keep the discussion alive, it's a very lively discussion. Thank you. But question for everyone. Do you know where is our APM SaaS running? Germany. Is it running in DXC data centers somewhere in the world, in Micro Focus data centers?
Probably AWS.
We have one AWS from Yuval. Anyone else?
Well, I know the location in Germany, AWS in Germany.
Correct.
For
So
at least
yeah,
for Africa. For Africa,
Yeah.
at least.
we have APM. Our APM SaaS is running in AWS, both in the Oregon, I think, region and in Frankfurt region. I don't know if we have one in the Asia region. I think we don't. But yes, APM migrated from DXC data centers in the last, I think, 1 to 2 years. We migrated everything to AWS, and today everything on APM is running on AWS. APM SaaS is running on AWS.
Stupid question.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing stopping a customer from setting up an AWS Windows instance and installing a BPM on it and opening the ports to his environment, right? Then he would have
Excellent
to manage it himself.
question. No, that was my second question on the list. So you are absolutely right. Nothing stops customer from installing their own APM in AWS or Azure or whatever cloud they want to use. But one thing that I want to make it very, very clear, APM does not work with database services or cloud database services. So all the RDMS services from Azure, Postgres, Oracle, or MS SQL from database services from Azure. APM has to have its own database with database license, enterprise database license, because APM has a requirement for partitioning of the database that's needed for the profile database. And that is something database services are not cannot provide. And also, the code itself doesn't handle it. So if you have a customer that want to install APM on SaaS, they need to have another EC2 instance for the database and put a database instance supported by APM, such as MS SQL Enterprise Edition, not the Standard Edition, because Standard Edition doesn't support profile partitioning, and maintain the database by themselves. If they are using APM SaaS, we maintain the database. By the way, anyone has an idea what is the database we are using in APM SaaS? Oracle or MS SQL? It's a 50-50 chance to make it right.
I believe Oracle.
We have one Oracle from Yuval. Anyone else go with? Sami go with MS SQL.
Come
Like a GUI SQL.
on, guys, come on. I'm reading the.
Yeah, I think Yuval hacked the APM SaaS. We need to check security. Is there on the instance? Yeah, we are using Oracle and the Oracle Rack actually, and it has all the high availability and disaster recovery that we guarantee. But APM SaaS is using Oracle as its database under the hood. But yeah, Alvin, nothing prevents a customer from installing. We have a couple of customers that moved their APM to AWS, and yeah, they are maintaining the database on their own.
Well, they could keep APM on premise and then just put the BPMs on.
Same.
There's no DB requirement, right?
Correct.
Lots of firewalls.
Just to put the correct, just a firewall. And absolutely.
So when we eventually move to off-spread, we're going to get rid of the enterprise and Oracle prerequisite. We're going to run it on Postgres.
Yeah, you will get a new requirement for Vertica, but yes, you won't need the Oracle or MS SQL Enterprise Edition. You need to give some to get some. Optic data lake and Vertica under the hood is will be a key requirement for the solution. Yes.
What about site scope? Is it a part of the?
Same thing. Okay. So site scope, APM SaaS or SaaS in general doesn't provide site scope as a service. So all site scope has to be managed and installed and managed by the customer. You can integrate site scope to APM SaaS exactly the same as you do with your on-premise APM. So it's again communicating with APM over HTTPS. And then you can manage your on-premise site scope on the APM SaaS. By the way, with SiteScope, we already have the integration with OBM SAS. So if you are using your SiteScope more for the alerting infrastructure management, it may makes more sense to integrate it with OBM SAS. But if you're using SiteScope for more application kind of monitoring and you have a SLM on top of the SiteScope data, then you're probably more situated to integrate it with APM SAS. But you will need the SAM license in addition, so it's not part of the APM SAS license that, like Kevin showed earlier. No one asked about RAM. Ken?
No RAM.
Kevin killed it. He said no RAM. He said only BPM.
So only BPM are managed by SAS, and RAM, if it's installed, managed on the on-premise, can be integrated with APM SAS. I think we have one customers like that, Carvin, right? One or two customers?
Yes, there's one. I remember, not sure if it's still active, but yeah, it is possible, as you mentioned.
So RAM is also possible to integrate with APM SAS, but that piece of the puzzle, no consulting or any management, the RAM has to be installed on premise. Or, if you want to install it in AWS or Azure, whatever, install it yourself as a customer, but then just integrate to APM SAS and get all the data and reporting in central place.
Yeah, that actually opens up good Carvin and Asaf, good opportunities for new customers who are only targeting APM, because right now, at least my experience is most of the APM customers I have are basically Operation Bridge customers or OMI, and APM is just one of the monitors. So with that, maybe we can target only APM customers.
You're lucky most of my APM customers are now AppDynamics customers.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to do, is to have some competitive, especially with the traceability that Kevin showed, the diag-like mock-up. I think that will add a lot to it.
Will take time. But that raises another question I want to ask back to the team. So you all know SiteScope, or I hope you know SiteScope, and in SiteScope we have a URL monitors or URL sequence monitor when also SiteScope can replay. I don't know if you know, but SiteScope has a web script monitor which basically allows you to replay Vuegen scripts, and in the latest version, it can also replay true client scripts. Amazing. So now I have a question for you guys. Why do you think, or what should be the reason for me to choose BPM over SiteScope? Why should I use BPM and then APM? Because BPM is not standing by itself. It's not standalone. I have BPM has to be managed by APM today. In the future, it will be different. But today, you still need to have APM and the profile database, enterprise edition, like we mentioned before. If I'm only interested in URL monitors or a simple Vuegen script or true client that I can replay with SiteScope, why should I choose BPM and not SiteScope?
All the reports, transaction breakdown, etc., etc. I don't think that exists in SiteScope.
Yep, that's a very good answer. Anyone else want to chime in?
Locations.
If you want to take advantage of the public POPs that are already there on different locations around the globe, you don't have maybe a footprint in Sao Paulo, and you want to use that BPM location. Yeah, that's also a good reason. Absolutely, you don't need to go and install SiteScope there. But yeah, I think the first point Alvin mentioned, the level of reporting that we get from the BPM data versus SiteScope is a lot more detailed and granular, and of course already available. Sitescope is just a monitoring tool collecting the data, but Sitescope doesn't collect the breakdowns, meaning how much time it took for the DNS resolution, SSL handshake, first-time buffer, network buffering. These kind of measurements only BPM collects and not Sitescope. And then all the reports that helps you triage the data are already available for BPM. With Sitescope, it's just sending the data. You will need to build your report on top of the data. But on the other hand, you will be surprised that there are many, many customers out there that are only interested in the availability of the URL. They only care if it's up or down. And then BPM and Sitescope are pretty much having the same functionality, same capability. Sitescope can send its alert directly to OBM. So if you have a customer, again, more focused on event management use cases, then it may be more reasonable to suggest OBM or OBM SaaS and leverage Sitescope and its replay capabilities versus going with BPM.
But even now, Asaf, I think at that point today we can even send Sitescope to Optic, right? And we can do analytical reports there, and we can leverage.
But you need to correct. But you need to build a report. The Sitescope sending the data, it's like an envelope. If you want to use what's inside the envelope, you still need to build your report. In OBM SaaS, BVD SaaS, that capability is actually locked down. You cannot create your own reports in BVD SaaS directly on top of Optic. You need to have a consulting service for that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Might be wrong here, but I think it was against the ALA way back when, and you weren't able to integrate Sitescopes into APM for those monitors. It didn't go up.
Yes, Sitescope was part of APM, correct?
It was kind of.
It's competing. It was a lot cheaper. Yeah, I think today's they maybe fixed that, and it's becoming more equally pricey. But from the deployment model, it's BPM has the need for APM and the database. That's why I want to mention that. But you're right. Today with the unit-based model, it's almost the same thing.
One transaction is 4 units, I think.
I don't remember.
Which was about the same price as a BPM transaction on the old price books.
Actually, Alvin, that's a good question. Like, for example, if we have a customer who already have APM, can we migrate them? Is there a migration path to SaaS?
I tried. No. There's no APM. There's no APM to OpsB. You don't get units for the diags and all that kind of stuff. You would assume, but it's not.
I think there was, but then you have to do an upgrade, so it's not a free upgrade.
Yeah, you can't hand in diagnostics and licenses and get points or whatever for it.
Not only diagnostic, even like if you have BPM on-prem or any other APM, BBM or RAM or whatever. Now only BPM, of course. Can we move BPM on-prem to BPM SaaS? Can we do that or?
It is on SaaS.
There is no migration. You have to redo everything. So we had a couple of customers.
No, in terms of license, not in terms of effort, in terms of license.
That's something that you need to take with Kevin. I'm not familiar with any program that allows you to do, but maybe there is some magic Kevin as a product manager can make behind the scenes. Yes.
I tried to do a license of APM and Offspread, or the customer had separate licenses into unit-based costing, and they got no credit for the APM stuff. They got discount, but they needed to basically buy it again.
Okay.
The PMs were willing to give them a discount level, but they weren't giving them the same capacity as what they bought.
Mm-hmm.
I think the migration calculators only had agents and old OpsB.
Any more questions? someone has any additional topic on mind.
You want to go into RAM roadmap and stuff like that? Is that growing or is it still stagnant?
RAM, real user monitor?
Real user monitor. It hasn't been updated. I think the only thing that's changed is the color scheme. And the last two protocols that were added was the banking stuff. And that was from the back end of a POC.
I'm not familiar with any new development in this area, so probably the same.
Are we going to be keeping it in or are we giving it up like diagnostics?
Question for Kevin. I don't know what the product management have in mind for the future of RAM. If you ask me personally, it looks like it's more going towards the diagnostic direction.
TV direction.
But that's just my personal opinion. But that's a question for Kevin.
The customers are thinking the same, right? Because we haven't updated it in years.
Yeah.
It's still very powerful with the ATM monitoring. So.
Yep.
The caveat is it doesn't support all the new protocols of the new languages.
Yeah.
If it's not HTTP, HTTPS or something that we support, you're dead in the water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes, I just want to share with you a story, a use case that I've been working with APM SaaS customer in the last couple of weeks that you may find interesting and usable for the future. So a customer came to us and said, I am not that happy with the user authorization model that we have in APM. They want, for example, to enforce a password change every 3 months or 6 months, right? A password policy. They want to make sure that users that stop working in the company, they won't have any access anymore to APM, and they want it to happen immediately as they resigned from the company. They immediately want that permission to get revoked. Unfortunately, today with APM, our user administration model is pretty old, not so much RBAC, role-based related. And it's definitely not satisfying all those recent requirements about security, and that's coming from the vulnerability scans that customers are doing. So when that customer came with the requirement, first thing that we did was to go to the APM R&D and see if that's something that APM R&D can implement as a feature or enhancement to the product. But very quickly, we saw that it's very complex. It's not something that can be done easily on a patch or even a minor release, and it will take time to implement with the amount of resources we have at the moment, which then made me and few colleagues of mine to try to think outside of the box. And thinking outside of the box, we introduced OBM, probably a product you all heard about. And in the last two releases of OBM, starting from 21.11, OBM introduced the capability to integrate with external identity provider based on a SAML2 protocol or auth protocol, which means if I could integrate OBM with the external identity provider of the customer, then OBM and APM are good friends and they speak the same language and they can share authentication and authorization data based on lightweight SSO. So fast forward to today, actually, we have for that customer, we introduced in their AWS farm, we also introduced an OBM that is managed by SaaS. It's not the OBM SaaS offering. It's kind of a classic OBM server. But using that server, we are going to integrate with the customer identity provider. And from that, we will be able to get all the identity management requirements, such as password policy, lock users for after 5 failed login attempts, delete users, it will happen immediately. So all the security and vulnerability requirement that the customer was able to introduce to us, we are going to satisfy by integrating another OBM with the identity provider, and then between OBM and APM, we are leveraging the lightweight SSO. So I think, Alvin, you had a question earlier about what is the security model of APM SaaS? How can we ensure users are not exposed to things that they are not supposed to do? Hopefully, with this kind of proof of concept that we are doing for that one SaaS customer, we may be able to productize this and maybe even offer this to any customer that will come and say, listen, I want these security requirements. Most of them won't be able to satisfy solely just by APM, but hopefully now with OBM 2205, we are going to. So that's just a preview, but I wanted to mention it because I think there was a question earlier about what is the APM SaaS security model. It's basic, but I think we have a bright future with this OBM integration.
Okay, great.
Have you got any clue on the timelines for APM to be deprecated and plugged into OBM? Is that?
No, there is no ETA. It's under discussions because there are some capabilities of APM that are not yet available in OBM, mainly SLM, but there is also a lot of work that needs to be done. In the coming release in 22.11, we are planning the beta release of application management from MCC, the Monitoring Control Center, like we have for Sitescope, or as it's called, agentless monitoring. And we also have the hyperscale observability UI available in MCC. I'm not sure if it's part of this training already, if you're playing with it, or just the CLI. But the direction, the roadmap is that application management will be part of MCC, and the beta is already undergoing. If you want a sneak peek for that, I can show you. But it's work in progress. There is no clear timeline or ETA. My gut's feeling is I think we need at least another release or two. So hopefully somewhere toward the 23 November release, we will have more capabilities.
We can get our server count down because that's killing us.
Yes.
Lots of items there.
And the Java and IE dependencies.
Yeah, as well.
Yeah.
I had a customer, Nom, who's been using it for years, and he wanted to switch from NPS. And the smallest server count he can get away with is about 6 or 7 for the same functionality on one. And he's just doesn't float.
OBM SaaS, you get the Optic Data Lake as part of the...
That's a government customer that may not use SaaS. It has to be on-prem.
Okay.
Hopefully, CA also uses Vertica, so they're the competition. So hopefully they go with 3 nodes in the cluster rather than 1, so they get some of those server counters.
I think we reached the time slot, the end of the time. I don't want to ruin the rest of your training schedule, or you know me, you know now, Carvin. If you have any questions about APM SaaS or APM in general, feel free to reach out directly to one of us. I'll be happy to help you.
Thanks, Asaf.
Thank you so much, Asaf and Carvin. Thank you.
Carvin.
Sure, very welcome. Anytime.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Take care, guys. Have a good day.
You too.
Take care. Back to you.